I have two brief questions I'd like to ask, if I may.
Hi, welcome to Left Foot Media. My name is Brendan Malone and you're watching The Daily Question. Today's question of the day: why is Black Panther such a confused film? That's right, I finally got around, all these months later, to actually watching Black Panther. I watched it over the weekend and I was able to watch it away from all of the initial hype and all of the buzz and all of the articles and the claims and the reviews. In the cold hard light of day, just quietly, without any expectations, watching this film, I can safely say that this was a completely overhyped movie. It is not Marvel's best film ever. It just isn't. It's a good film, it's a well-made film, it's an enjoyable watch, but it is not Marvel's best film. That was definitely a lot of hype. This film was very, very overhyped. In saying that, there's things I like about this film. I love the visuals in this. The visual aesthetic is awesome, the colour palette. There are some places where, as people have rightly pointed out, the CGI feels a little bit tinny in places, but the costumes and the colouring and the design and the look of this film, it's impressive. I like it. I enjoyed that aspect of the film. I also really like the fact that this doesn't feel like your sort of prototypical sort of superhero film. The plot twist in particular is interesting. It's not your typical sort of apocalypse countdown timer, although that does come into it a little bit by the end, but it's not a major aspect of the film. And also the sort of, like, it's not your typical superhero film. There's enough of a twist here with these characters that makes both of them interesting. The villain is not one-dimensional. It is probably one of Marvel's better villains because he's actually so interesting. And interestingly, it sort of sets a template really in some ways for what we see with Thanos in Avengers Infinity War. Although I would say in this case that Killmonger has much more about him that makes us as an audience want to be sympathetic towards him. And so I thought that was good. That was a sort of a well-told tale, and the two characters and the characterization made for an interesting movie-going experience. However, this film, as I said, has been overhyped. There are things about this film that are just confusing, even if you stop and think about them deeply. So first of all, there is a confused anthropology in this film. The idea that you would have this highly advanced society that has the most advanced technology and is supposedly, as we're told, what, the most peaceful society on earth, yet it decides who will be its next ruler by brutal combat to the death. So you either kill your opponent or they have to surrender, and that's how you become king. That's a pretty primitive way of deciding who will be the next king. It's also a very unstable way of structuring how leadership will happen in your society. Effectively, as long as you meet the initial criteria, the right bloodline, etc., if you have the strength to defeat and kill the king, then anyone can become the king and then do whatever they want with Wakanda's resources. And it just seems like they don't have any legitimate protection against that idea or that happening, actually occurring. And that would make for a very unstable society. In a perfect utopianist fantasy, of course, that never happens. But of course, in the real world, we don't live in a perfect utopianist fantasy. There is human nature. So human nature would almost certainly, a lot longer back in the history of Wakanda than what we saw in this film, someone would have stepped up for their own selfish intentions and have taken control of the throne and then done all sorts of awful things with the technology that was at their disposal. So in many ways, you've got two of the worst combinations here. A very simplistic and brutal way of deciding who will be the ruler, and then once that person is ruler, they are given control over all of this powerful and potentially, you know, world-ending technology. So it's really not a good combination to have those two things together. And just, to me, it is a very confused anthropology. I also thought it was confusing when Killmonger steps into the ring to have his fight, that he seems highly skilled and very proficient in shields and sword-based fighting. Yet that's not how he's introduced to us. He's introduced as a great warrior in the sense that he has been a soldier and he has fought conventional modern military battles. And so to all of a sudden have him in this context of being able to fight with swords and shields and to be far better than someone who clearly would have been trained and brought up in that particular art of fighting just didn't make a lot of sense to me. It just really stuck out at the time, and my first thought upon seeing this is, why is he so skilled in this particular area of combat? I mean, it would have been nice, I guess we just left to assume that maybe he prepared for this battle, but it would have been nice maybe to have some sort of previous scene or a line of dialogue or something that sort of indicated how and where he got those particular skills from. It's also clearly a movie that's promoting an interesting agenda, again, about females and males and the sort of interrelation between the two. There's a very clear narrative here about one male in particular who's an important character being easily swayed to the dark side, and then it's a female who has to bring him back. There's also this interesting idea that you've got this what I guess the king's bodyguard, your primary sort of warrior force does seem to be here and charged with protecting the kingdom as female, which I thought was interesting because in a culture like this, that doesn't really make a lot of sense when you think about it. This is a culture where they have a strong warrior culture. Trial by combat is the norm. They clearly live and have built and structured themselves around this concept. And so in a society like that, your females are not going to be the superior warriors. They're just not, because they're not going to have the same physical prowess that men have. Men are obviously going to be bigger. They're going to be stronger. This is the real world, folks. This is how this works. And so therefore, it would actually make sense that you would be more likely to have your cohort of top elite bodyguards and warriors would be, at the very least, primarily, if not exclusively, male. So I thought that was a little bit confusing. The fight too between Killmonger and T'Challa, the whole the challenge for taking the throne off him, it doesn't really make sense when you think about it, because Killmonger actually follows the Wakandan rules, and he rightfully gains, the power over Wakanda. He becomes the king. He follows the rules as they are laid out, but T'Challa doesn't. Now, there is a technicality, I guess, they've tried to introduce here, that he didn't surrender and he wasn't killed, but the reason he wasn't killed was because someone else interfered in the fight and prevented Killmonger from actually killing him. So that's not Killmonger's fault. He's done everything by the books. And then when T'Challa returns and comes back to try and overthrow Killmonger, he's also then receiving outside help. He's receiving help and advice from others. And they're no longer fighting, I guess you'd say they're equals in the fact that they're both with their sort of Black Panther superpowers, but Killmonger is definitely at a disadvantage here. And outside help is being given to T'Challa, which actually means that this is not a fair and just contest at all. So effectively, the way he ends up back in charge again isn't actually by following the Wakandan rules, which, again, to me, this was just kind of a little bit confusing. Overall, it was a good and enjoyable film. It's not the greatest Marvel film. There's plenty of things you can raise questions about, but I liked it. Not a bad movie, even if it was a little bit overhyped. As per usual, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please let me know what you think in the comments section below. And if you like the content I'm creating and you'd like to see more of it, then please support me on Patreon or PayPal. There is a link for both in the description below. That's right, I can hear my theme music too. I'll see you tomorrow on The Daily Question.